to the Black Prospector Show. I am your host, the Black Prospector, and I just wanted to do an intro for the video series of Every Black Man Has a Story. But first, let me say, like and subscribe, please. Likes don't cost a thing, so just go ahead, help me out in the algorithms, and please like the video and subscribe, and feel free to share. Definitely appreciate it. But every Black man has a story. And today I'm looking to really kind of get a little bit deeper with Cobra, boom, John. Now, I'll tell you the reason for the boom, and this is why I wanted to do an intro specifically for John. One of the things that my son and I would always laugh about is whenever John tells us a drag racing story about his car, he always throws in there like a John Madden, like, John Madden would go boom. Well, John does the same thing, boom. So whenever you hear him, or the reason why boom is in his name is because John is always talking about whenever he shifts, boom. So hence why he gets the boom put in his name. So I don't even think I've ever told him that. So now, John, you know why you're called Cobra Boom. So it is fantastic to hear John tell his stories, because here's a man that is well into his 70s and he's still out there banging gears. So take that for all the people that say, oh, well, I'm too old to shift gears and having that third pedal is just too hard. John is still out there doing it at 78 years old. And he's not just banging gears on a Honda Civic. Instead, he's banging gears on an engine that's probably 3 times larger than a Honda Civic. As a matter of fact, I think the supercharger on his Cobra is actually the exact same liter size as what I have in my Honda Prelude. Yeah, that's sad. So if John is out here banging gears, boom, when he drives, well, that's certainly no excuse for some of us to be a little scared to drive manual transmissions as we get older. But, that's what the intro was. That's what got me really talking to John early on when he married my mom's best friend. But what ended up really, I'll say, fostering a much deeper friendship is how cool and how mentoring John was, not just to me, but even my family. And I've noticed that he's been this way with other people as well. And so over the years, I've had an opportunity to meet other people that John knows, from his family members. We even linked up to another brother, that Malcolm, shout out to you, Malcolm, out there in Nebraska. Malcolm would come all the way into the Woodward Dream Cruise. Get back to 8 Mile Road. The Woodward Dream Cruise, Malcolm would come in with his Mustang. So we would all bounce in our Mustangs together over at Mustang Alley over in Ferndale. That was always a huge thing for us. And John was the centerpiece around that. It was like the party didn't start until you heard him rumbling up there. So it was always great to roll in with him. But then what took our friendship even more to another level is when John visited, and he actually stayed with me for a few days a couple of years ago, right before the world shut down. And the greatest part about that is I really got to learn about John's past. And I can just say that my mouth dropped, because it blew me away that finally I'm speaking to someone who lived during the quote unquote civil rights era that had their eyes open. And what I mean by that is because all my life, I won't say all my life, I'll say going back into when I started getting a little bit conscious, as we said, in the hip hop community back in the early 90s, I would ask people, older people, well, how come you didn't teach me this? How come you teach me this about race? You never told me these things about Malcolm X. Why am I learning more about Malcolm X because of a Spike Lee movie than I've ever known before? I never knew that this guy Fred Hampton existed. The only thing I knew was this light skin and this dark skinned dude, they were part of the Black Panthers. That's all I knew. And so much of what I learned about my own history, I did not learn from my relatives. But to sit back and talk to John, and fair enough, many of my relatives or my older friends, they just said, look, we were living life. We didn't even know all of that stuff that was going on at the time. And so for me to have an opportunity to kick it with John, and John is up here telling me what he went through as a child, which many of those stories exist, even with my relatives. But John put it in a different bucket of now, how is this going to shape me for the rest of my life? And then when he talks about his military career and what was done to him in the military, again, a great and fascinating story. When he talks about how the Black soldiers in Vietnam responded when Martin Luther King was killed. And I'll throw his statement out. I can't remember if he said it during the interview or not, but basically, if they tore up this country because you had all the riots that jumped off in the major cities. If they tore up those cities when Martin Luther King died because so many black folks were upset, what do you think they did over there with weapons? And then we got into his time with the Black Panther Party. Finally, it wasn't this book of the Black Panthers that I remember my dad had when I was little. Now I'm talking to someone who was a Black Panther. And so as John is telling me these stories, I'm just remembering things that I did read myself later on, some of the stories that I heard on how the Panthers got down. And so, not that I ever thought he was lying, but it's like, he's telling me exactly the same thing that I always heard. Wow. And my respect level for him increased far beyond, just us talking about cars, me respecting the man because of how great he was at photography and being able to shift gears. No, I had a newfound respect for him as a Black man and as a leader and as a mentor. And so I'm excited to share his story with you. And I hope you get some enjoyment out of it as well. The so-called ending, we do talk a lot about some things that happened later on in his life, and I'm not going to do a spoiler for that, but I'll just say it's a tremendous story, and the story isn't done yet. The story is not done yet. But I will say that John seems to have that thing that is certainly something I'm pursuing in my life. And, this goes and is something that a guy, Coach Greg Adams, always talks about, and that's freedom, peace, and quiet. And for me to look at John's life now and see him having freedom, peace, and quiet, man, that's what I'm all about getting. And I encourage a lot of you other brothers out there to continue pursuing freedom, peace, and quiet, because there's no need to have drama and confusion in our later years. Life for brothers, life for anyone is bad enough, but especially life for Black men is bad enough. That's why our life expectancy is shorter than anyone else's. So last thing we need is to have drama, unrest, no peace, and nothing but loud confusion as we get older. And so John, what he's lived through and gone through, he deserves to have freedom, peace, and quiet as he chills and still out there banging the gears, waiting on the snow to get off the ground so he can come rumbling out in that Mustang. So as I said, the story is not over yet, but I want you to check out his story. And I want it to be an inspiration for you of listening to a man that never seemed to live in light of fear. I tell my sons all the time, it's okay to be scared. I'm scared of so many things I'm scared of. But the question is, how do you react in the midst of that fear? Does that fear paralyze you to where you can't move? Or does that fear cause you to act? You at least have to do something. And many times inactivity is something, but it's something that could cost you your life, or it's something that could weigh you down, cause you to be depressed. Do something. And so it's great to hear John and to see his story. And it's inspirational to listen to a man that never seemed to be scared. And as he often says during this interview, I ain't scared. And so, John, thank you. You taught me even how to be more fearless when things come along in life, and to live not being scared. So with that, as always, let me introduce you to Cobra, boom, John, with Every Black Man Has a Story.
Saw that, but anyway, yeah, we had a wonderful. Charlotte had a wonderful childhood. The fathers I know. And my father retired from Ford Motor Company because they had an uncle out in Belleville, Michigan, and we'd go out there and visit him. And then that place down the roof, and it was for sale, and he bought it. So we moved out there in 1958. Spent my teenage years out in the country, from 12 on up to 18.
So what's
then
one of
the best?
Huh? No, I was going to ask, what's one of the best memories that you have of your father?
Oh, strong, silent type. We knew he loved his family, but he wasn't affectionate. But he would protect his family, loved his family. That's what we remember about it. He would go to work at Ford Motor Company, and he worked in the open hearth where they melt the steel pots and stuff like that. And he would come home. I heard my mother talking about he would have little pinhole burns in his clothes from the steel, molten steel popping out of that pot and stuff. they wore a lot of layered clothes, you know, with asbestos and stuff to keep, you know, because back then the asbestos kept the fire from getting to you. And I remember him saying he saw one of his co-workers fall in one of those pots of steel.
Wow.
I said, wow. Couldn't imagine what that'd be, but he would go to work. That was one of the least favorite jobs out there, because you know you working around all the hot steel and stuff on your shift. He worked a rotating shift. He worked midnights, afternoons, and days. And, you know, I guess all that helped. You didn't have to be stuck on one shift all the time. But when he bought the farm, he worked that farm, tried to get us to work the farm, but it was too late. We was already city kids.
So did your dad move you all to the country because he was from the country?
Yeah. He grew up in Alabama.
Okay.
Let me see something I'm saying real quick.
Huh?
His father would have been a slave, except that my great grandfather, what do they call him? Come on, man. Overseer. Yeah. And so he was the one, my great grandfather overseer. So he was the one that made sure the slaves did their work like they're supposed to.
Really?
And by my grandfather being his son, he didn't have to work.
Wow.
So he grew up lazy. That's all I'm saying.
Wow. So that was something that was that was I guess an oral tradition that was passed down in the family of you know, he was an overseer. The fact that you all knew that, because a lot of Black folks don't even know anything past their grandparents. So
yeah.
That's something that was talked about.
So you got to figure my age. I'm almost getting close to 80 years old, and I was able to see my grandfather, who lived to be 104, but I never met my great grandfather. He passed way before I was born. But that's the job title they had. I guess it wasn't because he's good looking, nothing like that. Just just how life fell on him. And but anyway, my grandfather, my father and uncles were raised, they still had to work the fields, but it's called, what you call that, sharecropping. Just a click above slavery. You get paid a little something, but all the work you did went to the folks that own the land. Yeah, you was never out of debt working that way either.
Right.
So, like I said, when they opened up the factories up north, I guess what, in the late 30s or something like that, early 40s, my father and two of my uncles, they left down there and came up north, got jobs in the factory.
Wow.
Chevrolet factory and Ford. My father ended up in Ford, but he started out at Chevrolet.
So I know you mentioned having your dad around really made you realize that was unusual. So now let's go to think about your childhood and your teenage years. How was it for you growing up? First of all, what time span? So in your teenage years, we would have really been talking about the 50s, we'll say. 50s.
Yeah, late 50s.
60s.
Yeah.
So what was life like for you then?
Well, just naive, and folks, we was raised in the church, and folks just told us to treat folks like you want to be treated. And that generation before me, they sheltered us from a lot of stuff that, we didn't know as kids growing up. You just didn't expect it. We just happened to run across as we got older, but we didn't know until, like I said, we got older. Oh, you said something about that. I remember, I don't know, I'll get back to it. When father went down to Alabama with his new car.
But go ahead and tell it now.
Oh, okay. I had to be at least 3 years old, maybe I think I was 4, because I was talking pretty good. And we went down, my father bought his brand new 55 Ford, I think in 1954. And he drove down to Alabama. And I didn't know at the time, but got a new car, that's cool. Rode down to Alabama. And we was down there, and he ride around and see the different relatives and stuff like that. And down there in Alabama, where we was running near Roanoke, and they would have, those single lane dirt roads, and you blow your horn as you go through the country to let folks know you was coming, you know, in case they had to find a spot to pull over to let you go by. And I think after a couple of days, he'd been spotted by the Caucasian, told him better get that in out of here with that new car, you know. And so that's what we did. And we said, yeah, we got to go on back to Detroit. But we stopped up in Birmingham some kind of way. I think he had Birmingham on the way back because they didn't have road maps and GPS and stuff like that. But he visited some relatives in Birmingham, Alabama. And he's on the way out, we were stopping. He said, I'm going to stop and get my son some ice cream. My brother was a baby. So he was just brand new baby. So like I said, he might have been about a year old. And it was my mother, my father, my mother, and my two brothers, no seatbelts. And we stopped at an ice cream stand, white guy running in a black neighborhood. And we came up there to get something and get the ice cream. I don't know what he said, but what it said, it stirred me up as a kid. I said, why you don't talk nice to folks like me. Folks don't talk like that. That's where I come from. And I remember him telling my father, get that little nigga out of here. Mm. And my father told my mother, he called us, said, Nettie, take the boys back to the car. And he came back to the car and we left. I don't know what happened to that dude because I knew my father carried that 38 with him. Later on, I realized. I don't know whether he beat him up or shot him. I don't know. Wow. But my father, that's before he was saved, so he became deacon. But that's the kind of, real quick too. I'm talking about the background from Alabama. My father's youngest brother and youngest sister were victims of a mob, white mob. His youngest sister was gang raped by a bunch of white guys, and she ended up dying in childbirth. And I don't know to this day why it was after my uncle, her older brother, but they came after him to lynch him. But you know, like I said, they didn't let kids sit around and listen to old folks' conversation. But I caught a piece of that. They're saying that he took out either 10 to 12 of them before they got him because he had a gun. Wow. And so I think if you go down there to Heflin, Alabama today, they tell you leave them Heflin niggas alone. They crazy.
Wow. So wait a minute. So she got gang raped, but then they came to do something to the black folks?
Yeah, to her brother. I don't know if he was saying something or talking stuff, or you know how it was then. You don't say nothing, look to nobody back then. Cockeyed because they would lynch you. Yeah. Straight up, didn't need no real reason. But they came to get him and he was ready for them.
Well, you know,
I get.
Go ahead.
He must have been a good shot because he took 10 to 12 of them out with him before they got him.
What's amazing.
That's another reason why they didn't allow black folks to have guns either back then. Almost up until recently. Yeah.
You saying that reminds me, I just learned something recently about Emmett Till. And it was actually from another doctor. She was doing a lecture. And I mean, I always give a shout out to Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. His channel and his work has influenced me a ton. But he brought up that she was mentioning when Emmett Till, when they started digging out of that, I think it was a lake, to find his body, they found the bodies of several other children down there. And so these bodies out there like, nope, that's not it. Nope, he's not the one. Nope. And it's like, this was like the dumping ground for black children that they had killed.
Yep.
You just go put them there. And you know, here it is, as old as I am, I'm just now hearing that. But it again is just such an amazing, I guess I'll just say, shock at how much violence and death was going on against black people at that time. And it's just something not even talked about, not even mentioned. You know, it's not even part of our history. You know, no one talks about it, so it's not written down anywhere.
That's why they're hollering so much about critical race theory. They don't want you to bring up the real history of America. It's going to come out anyway.
So that'll lead me then to, and I'm trying not to jump ahead because so many things I want to get to.
Go ahead, They'll keep going. I'll see if I can remember as you bring it.
Because I like how you're walking us through this, because now we're in the 60s. And it seems as though in your life, you have watched things happen to Black folks that impacted you. So now let's go to you graduate out of high school. Tell me about your life. Give me some stories from that time period.